Hey everyone, it's Shawn here, and what a great series we had with Greg. Thank you so much, Greg. I know many of you got a lot out of it, and many of you in the future are going to really enjoy that series. In a couple of feedback comments that we've had, I know many of you were having a hard time seeing the wet paint and the keep out signs. Well, here we go. KO is for keep out, WP is for wet paint, and BOD is beware of dog. So those are the targets right there. So from now on, we'll be able to see those nicely, and Matt won't have to highlight them behind the net. So a little less work for Matt. And so here's what I want to set the stage for, okay? The season's coming. We need to be ready. You folks need to represent wisdom in golf. You are all my representatives out there, so it's really important that we do this correctly. Now, some tidbits of information here that are super primo important. The longest walk in golf, we've heard, is from the practice tee to the first tee. And there are several reasons for that, and here is our take at Wisdom in Golf. And we needed two specific brain experts to really do that job for us. One is Jeff Hawkins, and he's out in Berkeley, California, and he is basically studying the human brain. His whole life was staged to study the human brain. He says, I don't want to go to medical school. I want to crack open a skull, and I want to see what's inside. And that's all he's been doing since he designed the Palm Pilot. That's where he made his money, and now he's heading up this beautiful facility. It's called Numenta in Berkeley, California, and he's talking about they've actually cracked the code on the neocortex, the wrinkly part of the brain that sits on top of your mammal and primitive brains, right? We basically have three brains: lizard, mammal, and neocortex. So he says it's a recording device. What it does is it records trillions of bits of information from what you see, what you feel, what you hear, what you taste, what you smell. Now, taste and smell may not be that important in golf unless, you're chomping down on a nice sausage while you just, bolted a drive right down the fairway at Pebble Beach or something like that, and it's a wonderful experience for you. You might appreciate that sausage in the future. So you all know, hopefully by now, of course, what a good 7-iron looks like, sounds like, and feels like. So the average person that goes to the driving range rolls a ball down on the mat. The mat is aimed right down the center of the range, and your eyes already have a frame as to what a centered 7-iron in the middle of the range looks like. And so you rake a ball in, and you take a whack at it. And the brain goes, well, that's not a 7-iron. A 7-iron looks like that, sounds like that, and feels like that, and that wasn't it on all three counts. Well, guess what? Because you already have the benchmark inside, the brain made the comparison already. It already knows what's missing. So you rake another ball in there, and you whack another one, and you go, well, that was a little less topped, a little more down there, but still not a 7-iron. So you rake another ball down, and you whack another one. And you go, oh, that's closer to a 7-iron. So a little bit left, a little bit low, but it sounded like a 7-iron, and it felt like a 7-iron. It just didn't quite look like a 7-iron yet. And then you rake another one down, and you whack one out there, and you go, wow, that's the 7-iron that I'm looking for. Perfect. But you can't do that on the first tee, can you? So you're rattling off on the range on a comparison chart. It works quite nicely, and you'll get luckier as you go, but the problem is you get to the first tee and you go, oh boy, now this matters. I gotta, make sure I don't go in the water on the left-hand side, and I can't go out of bounds on the right-hand side, and wow, there's a lot of crosswind right here. That's really making things problematic for me. I better make sure, better watch out, and now all of a sudden you have no golf swing. Especially, when you got the starter and a bunch of people waiting for you on the first tee. So how do we match it up? And this is so crucial, okay? So we have a focus sequence that we need. What's the first deal? You need a picture. not just the range. You need a very specific picture. So I'm going to use my wonderful signs. I'm going to say, okay, I want a nice draw from the keep out sign and draw it back behind the wet paint sign. Or on my range, I usually typically go with, I'm aiming at the red flag, I'm going to start it over the white flag and draw it back toward the red flag. So I've got my intermediate point right there that's going to help me line up to wet paint. Check. I'm going to play the ball a hair back of center. Check. And then I'm going to get behind the ball. It feels like now I have access to releasing to the right edge of that intermediate point, which I saw from back there, gets me to that keep out sign. Check. So now my setup matches the picture. So number one, you need an end target and a picture of a flight to get you there. A flight plan, please, very, very important. Secondly, the setup has to match that picture. How do you know the setup matches? Well, go straight to Goldilocks. You remember our wonderful off-season training that we did in previous sessions. So if I play the ball way too far back in my stance, it feels like I'm going to have to reach back to get it going to the right edge of that. If I play the ball too far forward in my stance, I feel like I have to lunge forward to get it to go there. If I reach too much, I don't feel like I can release the keep out and hit the ball solid. I don't have access. Hey, look at that. Now it feels like if I let the club release me to the right edge of that intermediate point, that the keep out sign is available. So now, what's left? I need the feel. I need to plug in the feel of what I need to deliver out there. And this is really key. Inside your brain, there's a section called the premotor cortex. And its sole responsibility is to pre-fire into your central nervous system to get you ready to perform a specific task. I'll give you a couple, and as you listen, you're going to experience it with me. Imagine you hold the club as hard as you can. On a scale of 1 to 10, you're holding it at a 15. And now you're going to take this and you're going to hit the ball as hard as you can. Did you just pop a rib mentally? I did. So that feels tight, and it feels like there's so much, effort involved, a lot of strain, and it really doesn't feel like you have any control over where the ball's going to go. Second scenario, you're going to use the weight of the club. You're going to let the weight of the club release you in that direction. If I let it release me there, I miss, all I get's air. Can you feel like there was no contact? All you heard was a whistle, out here, of course, preferably. There, it feels like if I let the club release me, I'm going to top it. Can you hear the top shot? Can you feel the vibrations on the bottom of the club? Can you see the dent in the ground that just made as it popped out? If I let it release from here, I feel like I'm going to hit it a little thin. So do you feel the vibrations on the bottom of the club but on the face? Can you hear the sound a little thin? Can you see that the trajectory and the initial velocity is going to be weakened by that? And then if I get a little lower, oh yeah, now it feels like if I let the club release me there, the sole of the club is going to drag through the dirt, so I can feel the ground. And I feel that the ball is going to smash the center of the club face, and I can feel the compression and the velocity is going to come off of that. So you notice how we're all predicting that together. So now from there, what's it going to feel like when I let the club release me with ease and a nice velocity? Oh yeah, it's going to feel about like, there we go. Just on the right edge of wet paint, tight little draw back there. That felt, it sounded, it looked like my benchmark 7-iron. And so you notice how we predicted that together and we got ready for it together. And notice how I made my observation. What am I going to do with that observation? It's already done. There's nothing to figure out. There's nothing to try and repeat, because you can't repeat. A little refresher there. They put the human brain under a PET scan, a PET scan, to see what parts of the brain are lighting up when you're performing a specific task. They used a short putt where a pro and an amateur made that same putt over and over again. They looked at the brain scans. They noticed the brain scans were very similar, pro and amateur, and the same parts of the brain were being solicited However, not one brain scan was identical from the next. Not one brain scan was the same. They were similar, but not the same, which means this is built for adaptation. It is not built for repetition. You can't be allowed to fall into a rut. It would be your demise. So the brain constantly has to have the ability to adapt, which means every shot's going to be slightly different. So don't try and make it the same. Don't try to repeat the good stuff, and don't try to avoid the bad stuff. It's not going to repeat. Isn't that a wonderful off your chest, right? Certainly was for me 8 years ago. So now, I'm going to pick a different flight. I'm going to start at left of wet paint, fade it back to wet paint. There's the left edge of my intermediate point. I get set up. I match my setup to that picture. I'm going, yeah, that's forward to center. The club face feels a little less closed. Now, when I let the club release me in that direction, does it feel like I'm going to hit it solid? No, 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 yes. No, no, yes. What's the feel? Oh yeah, I'm going to let the weight of the club release me in that direction with ease and velocity. Oh yeah. Beautiful flush. Just started to the left of that wet paint sign, and notice the height was higher. So I'm expecting a little bit higher ball flight with that fade. I can make it lower if I want to, but in my stock fade, it's always going to be just a smidge higher. And so, and I feel that there's a little bit of that release and that fade release compared to the draw release that makes it feel like it's going to, fade to the right. So is there any difference between that and playing golf on the golf course? None. And the better you get at doing this focus sequence, so let's review. We need a flight plan. We need a setup that matches the flight plan. We need a feel that we're going to deliver into that flight. You need to be specific on that. It has to be very easy to produce, and it has to feel powerful. Because, especially Tiger these days, if you look at what's going on, he's, making these beautiful swings on the range, is being rhythmic, all that. He gets to the first tee, he swings out of his shoes, and you could see the wincing, and everybody's jaws are on the ground at how much strain and effort he's using. So he's obviously not aware of certain things. I want you to be aware of that. So after I delivered my shot, I'm going to make that observation. So let's go back to a nice little draw here. Left edge of intermediate point to left edge of wet paint. Release over the intermediate point for the right edge of wet paint. When I let it release there, does it feel like it's going to be solid? Yes. What's the feel of that release? Oh yeah, low effort, nice velocity in that direction. Oh, beautiful. That was fully released there. Strain was down, velocity was up, contact was spot on, direction was spot on. I'm going to enjoy that one. Thank you very much. And then I'm going to, change clubs, change targets, go to the next one. So the next videos that we're going to see are going to be very key for you. Number one, we need a very significant awareness to the feel of the release. The feel of that release to the target is super key. It's what's going to allow you to shift properly and clear properly. So we're going to do an individual work on what the lead hand's going to feel like, what the trail hand's going to feel like. And then once we have that very, you're aware that you feel that release is beautiful, then we're going to make sure that your prediction process is spot on. Many of you are not aware of a lot of the things that are going on down here, and you really need to pay attention, especially those of you who have wandering eyes. That's devastating to the consistency in your shots. And the thinking process behind, that particular type of predicting. And then you'll see things are really going to start to streamline, and we're going to talk about the little things that are going to make the difference in your play this year, okay? Looking forward to it. See you next week.